So engaging boards, what works and what doesn't. Tim just mentioned scenario-based discussions, real-world disruptions, which I think fuel crisis at the moment, liquid fuels and what's happening and for how long the organization can last if things will evolve further. It's a great segue in terms of the conversation around it. And we know the Department of Home Affairs are briefing boards, briefing directors on that matter together with Australian Institute of Company Directors. So it's on their mind as well. It's more like that it's post-event, not before the event. This is the whole idea of protective security.
Just another spin on that, I suppose, is you can take a small case study to the board. There's one at the moment. There's in the New South Wales Office of the Public Prosecutor at the moment, Director of Public Prosecutions, there's an insider threat incident. We've done a small article on it. But there's enough in the media to sort of take it to the board and say, oh, okay, this person's been allegedly stolen data and done this and done that and the other. And that's in an organisation that will understand security and confidentiality and so on. Our personnel policy or security policies are blah, blah, and blah. So if that happened here, this is what we do. Or this is why it probably wouldn't happen here because we've got these mitigations in place. So you don't have to have a full day war and peace scenario thing for the whole board. It can be vignettes of 15 minutes or something like that, just so the board is sort of touching base with the real world that's going on now. It's not a fantasy, it's happening today. And that's why case studies are so valuable.
And I think as part of that, you can highlight interdependencies and cascading risks, because the impact goes further on your managed service providers, on other major suppliers, on other critical infrastructure sectors, because everything is so interconnected, interrelated. And this is where when sometimes board members, they sit on various boards. This is very healthy for the board to get advice from other board members, can be from another board.
There's nothing wrong with articulating uncertainty and gaps. In fact, that's a sign of a mature organisation. You know, the old, we don't know what we don't know. If you can actually get to that mindset. Now, we don't want to go off on fantasies and go all the way down every rabbit hole you can find. You've got to be realistic in terms of the threats that are likely to impact your assets and operations. But being able to identify uncertainty or gaps is important because you're going to have some. And I'd be very suspicious, I suppose, of a presentation that didn't identify some uncertainty and gaps somewhere along the line. So I think, you know, find them and have the courage to articulate them, but don't overblow them.
Then we've mentioned using peer examples and recent incidents. Cross-functional ownership, we have spoken about it in terms of not siloed briefings, but connecting it to different areas of organization, how, for example, the fuel crisis is treated across the organization. And I think those crisis scenarios, exercises, and life one we're having now, they help bring a different lens, different optics to the situation and see whether there are any gaps within organization.
I'll just make the observation about the peer examples and recent incidents. We haven't got much in Australia. And so whilst we've made some informal sort of suggestions, of course, to ASIO and Home Affairs about, gee, it'd be good if you could put more anonymised case studies out there, even if it was within some sort of non-public but made available to SOCI entities sort of thing through some sort of process. So often you've got to go overseas because particularly in the United States, they ventilate these things through the courts very well. UK as well, but the US is where you're going to get most of them. So do a bit of research and you'll find peer examples from like countries.
What doesn't work? Compliance-driven language, because it gets immediate this compliance fatigue in terms of so many different obligations they have responsibility for. We worked with the boards where there would be a question, oh, is it covered by insurance? Then we don't really mind. It's all right. But that's the challenge. And we feel your pain sometimes to have this conversation and thinking about different options and different situations that can help.
Frameworks can be abstract, and sometimes as soon as you mention, say, ISO, eyes will roll and so on. So again, we're back to the plain and simple English explanation. It can't be esoteric or abstract, as we say there. It needs to be framed in language and the scenario of your enterprise, so it actually is tangible for these directors.
And probably one of the things what we see now, we are getting to the era of uncertainty. For a few decades, we were in more or less certain area, but now what we see happening in the world, we're getting to this era of uncertainty. So it's having this conversation of the boards where compliance mindset doesn't work with an era of uncertainty, because things change constantly, and it's the question of how we can be comfortable within this uncertainty, because it brings opportunities, it brings organizational improvements, enhancements, opportunities, utilization of what you have. But I think it just as if shakes everything up.